My name is Tom Buttke. We have a program, a new program here. It's called Heroes from Home. And today we're interviewing Vern Neve. Vern, could you tell us about your family?
Well, I grew up in a township of Cary, which is part of Wood County, and I had 7 or 6 siblings, which is 6 boys in the family and 1 girl. And then in my individual family, I had the wife which came from Poland, Germany area after World War II, and I had 3 children. 1 born in Virginia, 1 in Marshfield, and 1 in Japan, back in the early 50s.
And you had numerous brothers that were in the service, I understand.
I've had 5 brothers that served. All 6 of us boys served in the military.
Okay, I got to ask you a personal question. What is your age, sir?
My age?
Your age.
Well, I'm 96. I was born in 1926. And I've been raised on the farm and had all the good farm work we did back in the 30s, which was a lot of hand work. And that's what we did then. And then I got employed by the military service in 1944 right out of high school. They were drafting everybody. As we turned 18, everybody could look forward to employment with the military. If you're physically fit, some part of it, they took you.
Okay. What year did you enter the service again?
I entered the service in July of 44.
July of 44.
1944.
Okay. And what was your rank in the service?
Well, I finally retired after 26 years of service as a command sergeant major, which was the top of the enlisted rank, which I served in top of the enlisted ranks for over 20 years. So I got to the top in 50, but that was before you had the last 2 ranks, so I had to get promoted a couple more times.
The next question I got is, why did you enter the service? And I think talking to you, you're going to tell us why you entered the service. Go ahead.
Well, entering the service, they just up and told you to come. And most people don't realize that in 1944 and 45, the military was getting smaller because they did not have people to draft. Because of the casualties, it was going down in strength. So everybody was capable of going in when they were 18 was being drafted, or they had already volunteered to go in.
And what did you do in the service? You did many different things, I understand, but you could enlighten us a little bit on that.
Well, at the first entry of the service, it was being under 18 and a half, they couldn't assign you to the infantry. You had to be assigned to other than the combat arm, which was the infantry, artillery, or armor. So I ended up with an anti-aircraft basic training and advanced training. The advanced training included bugler training, which is the bugler had to also be the driver for the CO, or the company commander or battery commander. He learned how to drive a vehicle. So that was not in top of just playing the bugle, you had to learn that. Plus you also had administrative duty in the administration office of the battery or company, whatever it is. That's a small unit that is commanded by a captain, simple rank. So then from there on, I entered advanced infantry. When you once become 18 and a half, they could put you in that. Went to Europe during the war in 45, and they needed somebody in anti-aircraft, and looked at my record and seen they already had some anti-aircraft training, which is to hope the hell you hit the airplane and shot it out of the air. But we had that training in Fort Bliss, Texas already, for identification and your firing of weapons and things like that for anti-aircraft, so I got placed in what they call an anti-aircraft half-track self-propelled, which made the half-track automatic weapons, which was a machine gun or something that would feed and fire by itself. And I didn't have to walk anymore because I went over as infantry. Infantry was to carry the rifle and the bayonet and the grenades. But I got put in a half-track outfit and I could ride. So I rode toward Berlin.
So what countries were you all in while you were in the service?
There go out about 15 of them, I guess, 15, 16 of them.
I won't hold you to all of them if you don't remember, but if you could just name a few to some of the folks.
I served in Germany and France, Korea, Japan. Also, well, we traveled through Belgium, but we didn't serve there. We just went through there. In the Netherlands, we went through there. You just traveled through those places. But the service was Japan and Korea and Germany and France.
So I understand that if you had your choice, although you entered the Army, was that where you would have liked to have gone, or did you have other things you wanted to do?
When I was 17 years old, I'd passed for aviation cadet, which was for pilot, navigator, or bombardier training. But on the 18th birthday, I received a letter. They released me from that program. So I quickly run up to the Navy recruiter here in Marshfield and said, "Here I am. I'm ready to go." And he said, "Oh, you were 18 yesterday. You got to wait for the draft." So I did have desires to be other than the foxhole.
Okay. So what are some of your fondest memories while you were in the military? You saw a lot of things, I'm sure. Yeah.
That's a good one. You've seen a lot over all the 26 years of service. There was a good many different things that you enjoyed. As far as duty time, I guess one of the biggest achievements that I felt good about, I wrote a field training exercise for roughly 800 men, different units, and that was out in the woods for 2 weeks. And I'd programmed all their moves and everything that they would have to do out there at that time. And it was the achievement of that exercise business that really made me feel good.
Okay, let's go to the other side of it. What were some of the worst things that you saw that you maybe didn't like?
Well, I didn't really get into where you'd shoot anybody in the eye. I never got into that part of it, because after World War II, I got into logistics, which is supply, and I stayed with that part of it from there on through my time on it. I suppose one of the worst times would be my being washed out of officer school 8 days before putting on the gold bar as being an officer. They found out my ears are bad. So I couldn't be an officer. I had to stay as an enlisted man. And that's what I served in for 20-some years.
Okay, just for the folks watching, to go back to give perspective on it, who was president when you went into the service?
I went in as Roosevelt president, and I think there's 5 different presidents I served under. But Roosevelt was the main president from back in the 30s until he died in April of 45.
That's it's quite the thing to go back, and young kids wouldn't probably even know who Roosevelt was. So you saw a lot of things in our government with our presidents, and you saw a lot of things in the service. What do you remember from the service? Tell us some things that you really remember. I know privately you and I have talked about different stories, what you all went through in the service. If you could just enlighten the folks on some of that. They're very interesting stories.
Well, I guess one of the times that really would be laughable in a lot of ways. I was assigned as A Battery Bugler, and Battalion Bugler went to Paris on leave in 45, and the battalion commander wanted the retreat formation. So a bugler had to play 4 different bugle calls for retreat. Well, A Battery Bugler, you're the boy. So I played the first call. The next thing I knew, the battalion commander shaking my hands for doing a good job. I was so scared I didn't even know I played the other 3 calls. That was some of the bad parts, to do that. But I was in procurement 1 year, and that was in '63 in Korea. And that was a very historical time to see how a government or a country start going for not manufacturing or even having a boss to know what to do to become proficient. To think of what we get from Korea today to what it was back there in the 60s.
So when you left the service, what did you do after the service? How old were you when you came out of the service then?
44.
44?
40 years,
and you did some other things then?
44 years old. Well, first job I got getting out was with the Power Pack during the winter of 70 and 71. And as the snow went, so went the job. So then I put in for the city police depot. Well, actually, I went to see the city chief and was talking about him about the auxiliary unit, which he didn't have one. So after about 2 weeks, I went back to check with him, and he asked me if I had a blue shirt and a blue pants or dark pants, and well, come in here at 1 o'clock and we'll put you on duty. That's how I got hired in working with the police department.
And how many years did you work for the police department?
17.
17
years.
I think you gave me a parking ticket one time.
I did wear out a couple of fountain pens.
You know, this is, I'm glad we're starting this program now because there's so many stories out there and we have to appreciate the veterans, what they've all gone through, you know, what they do for our country. And I'll just open it up to you now, Laverne, that anything you want to say that you went through, or if you have some other stories, I mean, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think one of the most trying times would have been in 56 to 60 in there when I was in Europe with the 3rd Armored Division, which was holding down the Fulda Gap. And that time the Cold War was going on pretty good. And any time at Frankfurt on the Main, you'd see an aircraft going to the east with those vapor streaks up there, a couple of them. You'd up and say, "Turn, boys, turn." And when that vapor streak made a U-turn and come back, we missed the thing out because the idea was to move out into the woods a minute on 2-hour notice. You had to be out, going out into your alert area, the combat position. And at that time, in the 60s, the 57, they figured a division of us was around 19,000. We'd be good for 3 days. After 3 days, we'd be shot up so bad that we'd be guerrilla warfare. And that's also the time in life when you're talking about the nuclear fallout. And the nuclear, that was not nice, because if they used the nuclear shells, you'd have so much radiation and things. The ones that was exposed the most cruelly, what you think now is you take care of the ones that's worst wounded. There, with radiation, the one that had the most radiation is the ones you put out on guard duty to die. So that was part of my responsibility to keep track of that if that would have happened. And I'm thank the Lord that that never happened, because to tell somebody, go out and die, look them in the eye and do that,
I can imagine.
That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. Anything else you want to bring up to us?
Well,
I know you have so much experience and so much history. Do you have something else for us?
I would say that brought me by my wife. I met her in '46 in Europe. She was of German-Polish descent, had living right across the border from Germany in Poland when Germany hit Poland in September 3rd or 1st of September of '39. In 3 days, and they were captured by the Germans. But I met her, and I'm very thankful I did. She became a very loyal wife, and come over here, and she had her challenges to come over, and she got her citizenship as soon as she could, and that they had their troubles there in '56, '57 in Europe, because at that time, if something would have happened, the wives had to drive the vehicles, the private vehicles, back into France. But they had made a survey. My wife had the 3 children. That means she could have had a wife and another child with her in the car. And those people would be the ones that would be flown out of Berlin, bring their dependents out of Berlin so they wouldn't be captured. And they'd be assigned to ride with that family back to France to get on a boat or something. And we had to keep a list of so much stuff we had to keep in the vehicles for them to go with, such as the flares and extra gasoline. You had to have an extra 5-gallon gas in there, and you had the other fan belt and some spark plugs and stuff for your vehicle. We had to maintain that list of supplies for your vehicle so that the wives would be able to drive them back into France.
Not only did the veterans go through a lot, but then the spouses or girlfriends or husbands, when ladies were in there as well, they went through a lot too then. A lot of worry and...
I know when the Hungarian uprising took place in the October of 56, October 56, they started asking a question from the young women. And there's a lot of wives that we had with us, with 19, 20 years old, that had never been away from the United States or ever knew anything. My wife spent two and a half days, she said, going around just talking to the wives, be calm, quiet, reserve, that they'll get you to move when they tell you, just do what they tell you and don't try to. Yes, they had their troubles too.
I'm sure they did. It's amazing, Vern, talking to you. The memory that you have from years ago is awesome. Anybody that gets a chance to talk to Laverne, he can tell you so much more than what we've got on here. And another guy we used to have coffee with was like that too, Frank. And it's good that you're able to tell the stories. I know some veterans that were more in combat sometimes don't like to talk about that, but once they get talking, and I believe you go to a veterans talk, do you not?
We're very thankful that the Auburndale High School has a little get-together during the school year. And once a month, they have coffee and roll for us early in the morning. And there gets about 20, 22, 25 veterans there. And we talk with the students that is in that club business. And here just recently, in May, they had us go on a duck boat trip down in the Wisconsin Dells. And that was a very touching time for a lot of veterans that didn't realize what they were volunteering for, to have their students with them and stuff, to go to the Dells and rode the ducks, the southern.
Tell us about, I know you went on the military Forgotten Honor Flight. I know you went on that. You want to talk about that a little bit?
I went in 2011. I went on the honor flight, and that was a very touching time for the evening before. The minute we put on the yellow vest or jacket, whatever you get, you forget whatever branch or how old you are or anything else. You're just a veteran. Mm-hmm. And everybody has that feeling of being a good veteran at that time. And nobody worries about it. Getting to D.C., it's very well organized. They had the 3 buses waiting for us. You were assigned to a certain bus. The ones that needed a wheelchair, they had them. As a number of veterans got into the wheelchair midday, they found out it was more strenuous than what they figured. I was quite young yet then. I must have been in the 85 line.
You must have been 85.
But that was a good time. It was a day that all of us remembered. Then when we had mail call coming home, when you're in the aircraft coming and they hand you a big envelope and you open up with all the letters from different people and students and what have you, that was a very touchy time. Then you come back in, the whole airport was filled with people. The first one I seen coming off was Lawrence Pancras.
Okay.
And that was beautiful to see Lawrence.
You know, I know being around, I'm not a veteran myself. My dad was, but we all have to respect veterans for what they've done for all of us. But being around veterans, you talk about different branches of the service, and they kid each other. But when it's all done, you all come back together again.
You're a veteran.
You're a veteran. Tell us about your organizations you're in. VFW, in Legion. Are you?
I'm a member of the VFW, and I'm a Legion, and also the Disabled American Veteran. Yeah, that's what it is. Mm-hmm. And I joined them. I've got quite a profile on my hearing. They got me down there, pretty good low part of that. That cost me my officer's school, getting commissioned, going to officer school and that. As far as visible break of bones, I don't know, the shoulder's got a hump from something, but that's from something falling in the wrong place or landing wrong or something. But anyway, that's all involved in that. The VFW is for men or women that's been serving overseas in a combat zone for a day or 2 days. If they're 1 day, if they get injured, and otherwise they got to be there for roughly 30 days. There's a little bit different rules for different things. Legion, they've opened up quite a bit, so a lot of people can join the Legion now. DAV, you're supposed to be handicapped in some way or other, either wounded or just through accident or something other that caused you an injury.
I think people really should know to reach out to a lot of veterans. There's a lot of veterans that struggle mentally, from the wars and stuff, and what you're doing with the military talk and all the other things that you talked about. It's important. It'd be nice if people would realize that they are vets and talk to them. And a lot of times we like the military talk, and even the honor flight, from what I understand. Once they're on there together with some vets, they start opening up. Whereas for years they didn't want to talk about the war or anything. You want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, the real combat part where they're getting to shooting them, somebody or killing somebody when they're looking them in the eye and stuff, I doubt if many of them were really talking only to another guy that did it. It's something that, as far as I understand it, there's a mental part of our body and stuff that we really are against killing somebody. There's only a certain percentage, as you know, in the society that is really trying to do something like that. But the majority of them are just, they're doing it to stay alive and do their duty with what they're called to do. That's in a pretty psychological area. I don't know that much about that.
Would there be anything, Laverne, that you want to mention to veterans?
I think between the veterans and the younger ones, the veterans willing to talk, but please, younger ones, ask a question and they're willing to talk to you. If you got your iPad or whatever it is, your smartphone, and you're punching that, a veteran ain't going to step up there to try to talk to you because they're considering that you're getting something special. It may be only talking to your pal that's sitting beside you, but that doesn't help for communications of understanding each other.
Everybody owes a tremendous amount to veterans for what they've done for all of us and our country. Any last things to say? Vern, you think of something else you want to say?
Well, actually, the armed forces expanded so fast in the late 30s, which would be about 38 on through there. As we all know, the 32nd Division from Wisconsin was pulled on duty in October, I think it is, of 40, which was a year before Pearl Harbor. I think with the news media and everything else going on, most people knew that we'd be getting into war. Now, for me to find out about Pearl Harbor that it happened, my next brother met me coming from the barn on that Sunday, the 7th of December, telling me we'd been bombed. But I think most people realized that things were getting pretty tight, because Spain had already a civil war going on. Japanese had went into Manchuria. Hitler had already taken Austria, and at that time he'd already Dunkirk had happened where they took the British Army out, and going through France had already fallen. So by the time Pearl Harbor got here, I think most Americans were aware that something was going to be happening. And they pulled in so many million, from less than 1 million population to all the military services, till over 16 million in less than 4 years. Mm-hmm. To think of that. And another thing that I find out talking to the young ones, they don't really realize what we mean when you say a company or battery or battalion or something, or the population. And a company can be anywhere from 90 to 200, and a battalion from about 6 to over 1,000, depending upon what type of unit you're dealing with. And the divisions, I understand now they're anywhere from 10 to 15. In World War II, they were anywhere from about 15 up to 18,000. And to take Marshfield is only 19. So then to think about supplying them in food and all the logistics, when you figure 6 gallons per every individual a day of just water, to get that up to them, and 6 pounds of food, multiply that by 20,000.
That's a lot.
You can start seeing where the tonnage and logistics to keep them going, that's not even the ammunition and stuff to go. So,
this program that we're doing, this is the first one that we're doing, and we hope to do this monthly. So if anybody, I got some people in mind to join us, but if somebody is out there that wants to have their loved one interviewed or whatever, we would really like to do that and get them on for future programs. You know, we just have a tremendous amount of vets, and people need to hear their stories. And unless you have anything else, I'm just going to say thank you, Vern, for your service. Everybody appreciates it, and thank you very much.
Thank you. You've been willing to help.
Good. Thank you.